Hey, everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Erich Archer, Emmy Award-winning AI video specialist, creative media strategist, and generative AI tools innovator. I'm super excited because AI is obviously the big topic these days and has so much potential for us in our businesses and our lives. So with that, welcome, Erich. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, I am too. Look, you're on the forefront of this stuff, which is great because I think everybody has a lot of questions, but there's definitely a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about. Can we start off with your personal story, though? I'd love to know what your background is and how you actually started your career before the whole AI thing.
Sure. Well, I studied film in college and then promptly moved to New York City to jump into the television industry, and was fortunate after a while to kind of get a foothold with a great company that taught me a lot. It was an independent production company and really talented owners, and I just had the ability to soak up all of their uh, talent and learn the business. And then I moved out to LA and did a couple of years out there. I kind of always wanted to do both, New York and LA. And so did that and got some great bigger studio experience out there. And then moved back to the Boston area because that's where I'm from. And I was settling down with my now wife, who's also from the Boston area. And so it was not a career choice, it was a life choice. And that forced me to kind of figure out a new path through TV because I was not in the same market. And I found this nonprofit community television space that's very robust here in Massachusetts, and got a great gig producing original content for one town full time, which was really interesting, to go that hyper local and that small all day, every day, and continue to try to tell original stories. It was great. And it was also, in LA, I had really kind of, in New York, I came up kind of as a camera operator. And then in LA, it moved toward more producer and hands off the equipment because they were really high level specialists on the equipment, you know. But coming back home and getting into this really small space, it was like, oh no, you do all of it. You write it, produce it, voiceover, like edit, all of it, And I was like, oh boy, I guess I got to get back into learning Final Cut and all that sort of stuff and shooting again. But that was great because it really just forced me back into this DIY mentality, and it forced me to get back into learning and keeping up with technology and stuff that I had sort of let go of. And then I had an opportunity to take over a station as executive director right near where I grew up. And I've been here for 12 years now, running this little brick and mortar regional community TV station, and trying to evolve it and make it relevant and valuable and entertaining and informative and cool. And I think we've done a lot of that. There's still plenty of work to do, but it's been really fun to just try to do all that on the back of content, and keep up with the times and all that sort of stuff. And that's how I rolled into AI. It was just, here comes another technology I've got to learn and figure out how to apply. But then I realized, oh, this really particularly applies to us because it's got this whole generative visual component. And also, as a small nonprofit, we're always really looking for resources. And that's certainly what LLMs feel like, is one giant resource, for grant writing or other things we might be trying to do, or maybe automations can help us do more faster and stuff. So it was certainly interesting for all those reasons. And I just sort of dove in trying to learn and use it. And
Nice.
I've just sort of developed a healthy obsession since, I guess mid 22 or so.
Well, it's a deep rabbit hole, so you can certainly be obsessed. So did you are you in Gloucester? Is that where you are
I
for
am,
your
yeah.
station?
Yeah.
Okay, so I went to college in Rhode Island, and actually one
Oh,
of
wow.
my suite mates grew up and born and raised in Gloucester, moved back there, started a family. I
Nice.
think he married a girl he went to high school with there too, as well. So I haven't talked to him in a few years now, but yeah, a
Nice.
nice little seafaring town there, right on the shore. That's cool.
It's great. It's great.
Um, so, with your background in AI and what you've been learning about it, was there something about it specifically with AI that drew you to it, aside from sort of the business implications of what you could use it for?
Absolutely. The creative potential immediately clear to me, or at least, the scratching the surface of the potential was clear to me. Um, it was just I got into Mid-Journey pretty early, and it was just mind-blowing to think not only can I generate any kind of asset, but I can own it and use it. Um, Incredible. And then I could turn it into video from there. And I know what to do with it with video. So like that, it's not a long walk to be like, this is a total game changer. I'm sure you've heard that term a lot this last year, but I mean, it was, and there was a moment for me. It was like working on this personal project. I had this little wallet-sized, fuzzy old picture of my ancestor from the 1800s, and I turned it into this big cinematic, widescreen, gorgeous, like film stock at Magic Hour looking type of thing, and it looked just like him. And I was like, "This is unbelievable!
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe I could just do that." So yeah, that really opened my eyes very quickly.
That's crazy, and it's, I mean, it is so cool. It's amazing some of the things that you can do with it, in terms of the different technologies, and then they're evolving so fast. It's hard to even stay up on it. But so I'm curious, coming from the TV production industry, how has AI already affected it? I mean, do you know what sort of? Obviously, there's a whole future coming, but have there already been drastic changes due to it?
Well, I can speak to it at the ground floor because I'm in a small market environment, but the production workflows are changing rapidly. From pre-production all the way through post to the point that that linear framework is sort of changing.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Where it's projects aren't even necessarily starting at the beginning anymore. You can kind of like take a reference image or a piece of data or a quote or something and kind of like build outward around it now in a totally new way. But all the tools are building in AI functionality from, help with audio, generating additional imagery or extending imagery or all these different tools to affect it in different ways. So, and then, you can use LLMs as well to process, like if you go out and you shoot a day of interviews, if you're familiar with long transcriptions, being able to process those with time code is an enormous time saver. Um, and certainly automating certain things. Uh, but I'm really loving all of these sort of like big whiteboard style platforms that are very collaborative, and you can kind of put media assets up there and move them around and automatically generate things. It's pretty incredible new environment.
That is cool. And obviously, there's a ton still to come. But I was just curious because I know, having technology is one thing. The other element of that is adopting it, right? Being able to use it in a way. I
Hmm.
remember when my wife is a high school teacher. So I remember when the whole GPT thing first broke as a big story, and everybody was like, well, they're all going to be writing their essays using Chat GPT. They're all going to be doing that. And then it was, well, what tools do they have to be able to detect whether somebody used ChatGPT? So it's like this endless game of cat and mouse. But it's interesting because you can see as it starts to evolve, people understand better how to use it and how to control it at the same time. And I think that's really the key, right? With any, it's kind of like the old Spider-Man quote, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Once you know, okay, these are the sort of the guardrails, and these are the things that we need to do, and these are the ways we can use it as a tool. Like I know for me, um, a lot of things I do, my individual voice matters because it's about the personal brand and all that. And so I don't use AI like exclusively to create stuff for me. That said, I use it as a crutch all the time. It's great to create outlines. It's great to create, like you said, the transcripts, chopping up videos into smaller, shorts and things like that. So there are a lot of ways to use it that are really, really effective once you get to understand it. So with it being everywhere now, and it's creating new efficiencies, but it's also replacing a lot of people, a lot of things and people too, right? Despite its benefits, should we be cautious or afraid at all about the future of AI? Obviously, there are some naysayers and some people that are a little bit more negative about it. So I'm curious as to your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, there is an enormous amount of legitimate concerns that are very big, very real concerns. And to be honest, I find myself being such an optimist that I have to like go look for that stuff and force myself to watch it and be like, you have to remember that there's real risk here because I just get so excited about the pretty pictures. But uh, yeah, I mean, we have companies that are flying down the road with this stuff relatively unchecked. Uh, there's a lot going on at the federal level that makes me nervous. Um, and the speed of all of it, the disruption coming. Uh, I mean, even seeing a robot doing kung fu on Instagram the other day was like, Jesus. You know, I don't look forward to the day where enforcement is being done by robots and stuff like that with LLM brains. And so yeah, I mean, yeah, we
Yeah,
gotta we
well,
gotta be really worried about that stuff.
it is funny because you saw over the last decade, 2 decades, all these dystopian movies about science fiction, end games and crazy stuff with computers that thought for themselves, and it all seems so fantastical that you're like, oh yeah, this is cool, but there's no way that would ever happen. And then as the time goes, you start to realize, well, we are creeping a little bit closer to it. There are some things. I mean, I saw iRobot, and like the robots becomes like sentient. They start to understand, and it's like if you have them everywhere, there is a risk from the perspective of the more connected everything is, right? If something could affect that network or affect, the operating system that's behind it all, that's obviously a huge risk and really dangerous. So, yeah, I kind of see it the same way. I mean, I'm mostly optimistic. I see a lot of the benefits and a lot of the positive uses for it. But like with anything, anytime that there's something that's really effective, you're going to have people using it for nefarious purposes, and that's never a good thing. But it is one of those things that we just have to sort of be vigilant about going forward, I think. So the topic itself, the whole concept of I know for a lot of people that I talk to, it's a bit mysterious. It's a bit of a black box. They don't quite get it because there's all these moving parts and different things going on. Plus, it's evolving so quickly. Also, there's a sprawling growth of tools. Is there any way to sort of understand or get a sort of 10,000-foot view of the big picture in terms of AI engines, APIs, tools, custom GPTs, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of zoom out and see the sort of bigger buckets of AI. I think there's the LLMs, there's a bunch of those, but they're all similar in nature. And then there's all the generative tools, um, again, kind of doing similar things. And then there's all the automation stuff that's going on and agents now too. Uh, so those are the kind of the main things. And then, it's just sort of in my experience, like project specific, how you would go about deciding which thing you want to incorporate and work with, or if it's research based, which LLM is going to help you with that. And then if it's, content based, maybe it's images versus videos and which tools are doing what. But like at the end of the day, you're still trying to get down to the same outputs. You might need research, you need assets, you need audio, you need things to go from one thing to the next thing. It's still very understandable stuff. It's just new ways it's happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know that there are a lot of tools that are trying to make it user friendly by building on things in a way where they're putting different pieces together. So for the end user, it actually reminds me, interestingly, of the typical sort of stress that always existed or tension that existed in typical technology, right? You always had the technicians, the people that were doing things, and then you had the users. And so the technicians could create something in a way that functionally it would do what it's supposed to do. But from the user perspective, they're like, yeah, but I don't understand. I want to just say this and do this. And I wanted to. And so I do see there's that whole layer too, where people are sort of taking the AI model and or multiple AI models, combining them in a way where to the user, they have a different or unique experience with it. And they don't need to do a lot of the heavy lifting, the creation or the sort of detection about what to use from a technology standpoint, because the app tells you this is what it does for you. And so, and I'm sure that will continue to evolve as well, because there are going to be more and more use cases for that as we go and as we evolve with this whole thing. So, all right, so let's talk about content creation within the context of AI. That's obviously been a tremendous change and shift, because it used to be that any kind of content was all manual, manual intensive, like high labor, lots of time, lots of energy to create anything. And the fact of the matter is, if you want things to be completely unique, you still have to invest yourself in them to make them unique and make them yours. But you can create things so much faster and easier now. Where do you see that going in the future? Do you have sort of a crystal ball there for what you think is going to happen with content creation?
Well, all content's going to be leveled up pretty dramatically. The bad content, the lazy content, and the excellent artistic content too. We just all have access to more tools than ever. And you can cough out something that looks amazing now, or you can spend a couple months on something and make it incredible. Um, you know, in general, it's a million times easier to make something now, but because of that, it'll be a million times harder to get it seen because it'll just be so much stuff. So you're going to have to fight on merit and quality, I think, um, as much as ever, if not more, because there's plenty of statistics that show that people want authentic content and really good emotional storytelling and stuff like that. Um, so you still got to do that. You still got to be a good storyteller, and but but there's going to be just an unlimited amount of content soon, personalized, interactive. I mean, it's going to be a whole different environment.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm starting to see that already. In the realm of social media, you see that it's interesting because there's almost two dynamics going on at once. One is in the proliferation of content now is so easy. I mean, the challenge used to be how do you post often enough to get traction and all that other. Those things are all gone now with the idea of all these automated tools, all these things that create stuff for you. That's not the difficulty anymore. The interesting thing for me has been sort of the swing back toward authenticity. Instagram in particular had gotten to a point where I think it sort of evolved, and everything kept getting more and more curated to a point where things were so artificial. The standard became so unreachable that it was sort of all this artificial, super overproduced stuff. And now I'm seeing almost backlash is the wrong word, but I'm definitely seeing a widening of the interest and desire for that authentic content, even if it's ugly, even if it isn't polished. If it's real, there's a growing thirst for real because people are also inundated with machine stuff. And so it's a fascinating dynamic. I'll be very curious to see how that all plays out. And I think that people that are able to use the technology in ways where it elevates what they do and makes what they do easier and faster, but doesn't remove the authenticity from it, is sort of where that sweet spot is, where you can really, really make your mark. Um, so, in terms of video specifically, I know that's sort of your wheelhouse. What are there particular developments in AI for video right now that you're excited about, that something that you could share with us, or something that you've had an opportunity to work with already?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've used pretty much all the generative tools at this point. And as you mentioned earlier, there's a number of companies that are sort of aggregating them and giving you one interface to try lots of them, which is nice. So I've been sort of slowly moving away from like the platforms that I had gone to for the last year, like Midjourney. But, anytime I needed an image, I would go there. Now I might go to a free pick or something that gives me the option to pick from 10 different image generators, depending on what I want the image generator to do, because they all have sort of different capabilities, different strengths and weaknesses, and tool sets within them. Um, but I mean, now if you go to some of these sites like Runways, you'll see they have all these different tools. If you need to blur faces or make subtitles, or if you need to clean audio, or if you want to add color to black and white. I mean, there's so many different things that you can just, this is the model that does that. So, uh, it's very, very interesting to be thinking in that way, like, okay, I have this technique I want to do, or I have this idea. Where should I go to source the tool for that idea execution? And you might be using, a whole bunch of different tools within one project now, to generate your own assets, uh, depending on what you need them to do.
Yeah, and I think what you hit on there is really, really important, and that is the idea of having the awareness so you can have the decision making to get you where you need to go. Like, there are things now out there to do just about everything, but you have to be aware of it. I know, even pre AI, right? I'm sort of a tech guy. I've always liked technology since I was young. I had a brick and mortar computer business when I first graduated college, and so that was always sort of my thing. And just with that mentality, going through the various things over the last even 20 years, there have been a number of times where I've had a problem and I was trying all these different ways to solve it, only to find that there was already an existing solution for it, or a tool that I just wasn't aware of. And so I got into the habit of saying, well, look, like you said, if I've got an issue, if I've got something I need to do or accomplish or whatever else, I'm going to see if there's already a way that's created for this, instead of sitting down and thinking, okay, what are the steps to it? I mean, because it's just crazy. Like, now you end up wasting weeks of time trying to figure out something, only to find that there was a tool you could have plugged into that would do it. And with AI and with the evolution of AI, that's becoming even more and more prevalent, because there are a lot of things that we do that we may not even consider that there's an easier way to do it or a better solution. So I think that's a really important sort of mindset to adopt, is to look for what the options are that are out there, and is there already a way that you could do this. And it's a balancing act, because you also don't want to go down a rabbit hole where my brother's famous for this. He gets so micro focused on things that once he gets into something, he won't come out of the room for 18 hours. You know what I mean? Like, I remember that even a kid growing up with him, but his wife tells me the same thing. He gets fixated on something and he's just like, dude, and it's like 16 hours later, he's emerged with some solution. And you're like, wow, I mean, I don't know if you needed to go through that much effort. You probably could have, but idea is still valid. So you made a short film called Rufus about a 19th century Cooper. Can you tell us about what inspired you to create that? Sounds like a really cool project.
Oh, thanks. Um, I was doing I was in an AI program early 23, and they encouraged us to make our own projects. And because I'm a video guy, I chose a video project, and it was ancestry research my dad had done. he had some photos and some paperwork and stuff about our ancestors, and it just looked, the pile of papers and images and stuff looked like the right source material for an AI video project. I had a little bit of visual stuff, I had some data, I had some story elements in there. And so I basically mined his research and identified one interesting relative of mine to profile in a sort of a Ken Burnsy way in an effort to demonstrate the state of visual storytelling with the AI tools available at the time. So even though it's only less than a year and a half later, I mean, the same project would look wildly different. But at the time, it was a pretty novel thing to even be able to put a generative visual story together of any length. It just was early for that. But Ken Burns' style really lent itself because it's so simple. Still very powerful storytelling, but simple production. And so that's where it started. I just tried to basically rip off Ken Burns. I had just taken his master class, which is excellent. And I was inspired to try something like that.
That's awesome. So this is actually based on one of your ancestors. Is it?
Yeah, my
Oh,
great great
nice.
great grandfather.
Well, I mean, so obviously you must know. I mean, being a Cooper is really difficult. You have to apprentice for like a decade or something, don't you?
Yeah.
And then I mean, I've been to Mystic Aquarium, like Mystic Seaport, and I've seen the like Cooperage stuff. And I mean, that's really complex. I'm amazed
Yeah.
by the science and the math that goes into all that stuff. It's really, I mean, there's science to it, but it's an art and it's something that you need to apprentice for a long time. So that's fascinating. What a cool thing. So I also want to talk about one of your other projects. I know you collaborated on a project called The First Artist with some groundbreaking stuff in it. Can you share with us what that's all about?
Sure, thanks. That was for a company called Dreamflare AI, and they're trying to be like the Netflix of AI generated content. And it was an original project for them. Again, taken from inspiration at home. My kids were reading a history textbook about the first artists, these human ancestors of ours that were living 35,000 years ago in Indonesian caves, and they were the first people, or some of the first people, to put figurative drawings on cave walls ever. And um, it was just, more. Um, it was another sort of creative brief. It was like, here's some pictures of what these people might have looked like, and here's some anecdotes and stuff. So I just went down my own rabbit hole of learning about these people and tried to tell the story in first person perspective of the single first artist, like the person who was the first person to do that and what their dangerous and beautiful life must have looked like.
That's very,
So
very
that was,
cool.
again, just like a next evolution of the Ken Burns Rufus ancestry project was just like, okay, now we're a year later, let's do the same kind of thing, let's just use the new tools and see what the new level is of the storytelling now.
That's awesome. And I love that. I have to say, I love the fact too that you're using the AI tools. And this is precisely what I was talking about in the very beginning when we started talking is you're using them in a way that is elevating your creativity. It's not replacing it. You're not saying, here, AI, go do all the work. You're still the creative artist behind it. And I think that that's where there's tremendous power and a lot of things to be excited about in terms of the future of AI. So storytelling has been popular since the dawn of time. I mean, you touched on it right there with the first artist, whether it was oral storytelling or cave drawings or whatever else. But even before writing, right, stories were told and passed down for generations. It's how some of the things existed and continued to exist, and we know about them today. So it's obviously valuable in business and marketing too. You see a lot of marketing agencies that are designed to help you with storytelling and things like that because they understand the value drawing people in with that. Where do you see the future of that headed in with regards to AI, but just in general?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned, story is sort of the core of communication, and now our visual storytelling capability has been leveled up by I mean, I don't know what factor, but a lot. And that's true everywhere. That's true with a company with one intern focused on generating assets for social media to huge companies that could do groundbreaking cinematic work now with their company stories. I do see that coming as people start to wake up to this, like, wow, if we applied a small percentage of this marketing budget toward original content creation, we could have our own Game of Thrones so that's a very exciting thing to me to think, what stories haven't we told? What didn't we have access to before? What was too expensive? What was too far off landy or fantastical or like just too expensive or you know let's start telling these stories in much more visually compelling ways, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point, and I think your own projects even are sort of a testament to this because you were able to mine things and compile things and then use them in a way or put them together in a way that created a narrative out of just sort of random bits and pieces. And I think being able to do that is so powerful. It's so effective, and it's exciting because the ability. I mean, in a way, I there have been times where I felt like, geez, I wish I was born 30 years sooner. And then there's times where I'm like, well, to be born in 30 years from now, imagine, because all of my kids have copious amounts of photos, digital photos, and everything of their entire youth. Because my wife and I have taken, and for me, I've got from my parents like a couple of leaflets worth of old photos because you had to get the old film and then you had to get it developed and it was expensive. And so, you just don't have as much. So I guess for better or worse, but anyway, that's kind of funny. So, all right, where can people connect with you, find your products, find your services?
Thank you, thank you. Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn. If you want to check me out there, Eric with an H Archer, or my AI portfolio website, cgacreative.com. CGA are the initials of all four of my kids.
Nice.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks for that. All right. I have one last question to ask. I think it's important. I know you're not like a strict business guy, but for entrepreneurs, I'm curious to know what's your number one tip for success?
Um, I think the number one job of an entrepreneur today would be learning. I think it is a continuous effort now. It is not a linear one-off thing. It is an all the time thing. And beyond that, I would say just stay within your subject matter expertise and your passion and pair AI with that because that's where the magic happens.
I love that. Yeah, and I've always been a lifelong learner. Tried to instill that in my kids, and I think it's always been important. But now, in particular, especially if you're in any of the fields that have sort of this evolving technology and everything else, you just have to. I don't think it's anything that's sort of nice to do anymore or something that's a good thing to have. I do think it's a requirement. So I agree with you completely. Um, all right, with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again so much, Eric, for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Visit cgacreative.com for his AI portfolio website, where you can keep up with Eric's projects and connect with him. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, remember, no matter what you want for your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.